Welcome to Talk Treatises. I'm your host, and as always, we are here to peel back the layers of the world's most enduring texts, the books that have shaped civilizations, arguments, and the very way we process reality.
It's good to be back.
We aren't here for the Cliff Notes. We are here for the architecture of ideas.
And today we're doing something I think is long overdue. We are stepping outside of the Western canon, away from, the agoras of Greece and the salons of Europe, and walking straight into the heart of ancient Indian philosophy.
Right. And we aren't just doing a broad sweep of Eastern thought. We're going deep. We are doing a deep dive into a specific foundational text.
A really specific one.
Today we are dissecting the life of Buddha. Specifically, the epic Sanskrit poem by Azvegosha, known as the Foshohing San King, in its Chinese translation by Dharmaraksha.
This is a monumental work. I mean, it's not just a biography in the way we think of one today. It's really a philosophical treatise that's it's wrapped in the guise of an epic narrative. It bridges the gap between the lush, sensory world of Indian royalty and the stark, rigorous logic of liberation. It was written roughly in the 1st or 2nd century AD, and it really sets the tone for how the Mahayana tradition views the Buddha.
How so?
Well, not just as a teacher, but as a kind of cosmic inevitability.
And I want to set the hook right away for everyone listening, because when you hear Life of Buddha, you might think peaceful statues, incense, maybe a bit of meditation. You might think of a very passive story.
Sure, a very serene image.
But this text reads like a psychological thriller.
It certainly does. It is high drama.
Imagine a life perfectly engineered to prevent you from knowing the truth. We are talking about a Truman Show scenario, but set in a gilded palace in ancient India.
That's a great way to put it.
The text describes a prince, Siddhartha, who is essentially trapped in a pleasure prison.
That is a very, very accurate description. The text tells us that his father, King Suddhodana, was terrified of a prophecy.
Right, the prophecy.
When the prince was born, the soldiers predicted he would either become a Chakravartin, a world-conquering monarch, or a Buddha, a world-renouncing ascetic. And the king, well, being a king, he wanted a successor.
Of course, he wanted the power, the dynasty.
So he decided to curate the prince's reality, to engineer it, just like you said, to ensure he never felt a single moment of dissatisfaction that might, trigger a spiritual crisis.
It's the ultimate helicopter parenting. It's safetyism taken to this incredible extreme.
Precisely. And our mission today is to explore how this specific text articulates the transition from that life, a life of total sensory indulgence, to the rigorous logic of liberation.
So we're not just telling a story.
No, we're going to dissect the arguments.
Yeah.
Azvegosha lays out these brutal logical chains regarding the nature of the self, the mechanics of suffering, and even the argument against a creator god.
So buckle up. We are going from the perfumed gardens of the harem to the cremation grounds. Let's unpack this.
Let's begin.
Okay, segment 1. Let's set the scene. The gilded cage. And the text is incredibly descriptive here. It's not just, he lived in a nice house. It's an assault on the senses.
It is. The king commissioned palaces for different seasons, summer, winter, and the rainy season. The text says they were filled with music, women, and luxury.
But there's an intent behind it all.
Yes, and that's the key. It wasn't just luxury for luxury's sake. It was a strategic distraction. The king surrounded the prince with young, beautiful attendants. The text specifically mentions that no one with a scar, no one with a gray hair, no one with a limp.
No one showing any signs of illness.
Exactly. None of them were allowed anywhere near him.
It's a curated Instagram feed come to life, just constant, relentless perfection.
And this creates the central intellectual problem of the early chapters. The king represents this drive for stability, succession, worldly power, what we might call the status quo.
He's the embodiment of the idea that if you just have enough resources, you can keep the darkness at bay.
Right. You can build walls against reality. The prince, however, even amidst all this pleasure, has this gnawing sense of unease. He is seeking an escape, but he doesn't yet know what he's escaping from.
That is such a relatable feeling. I mean, you can have everything, the job, the house, the comfort, and still feel this background hum of anxiety.
Exactly. The text suggests that the prince's merit from past lives was ripening. He couldn't be contained by the pleasure because he was intuitively aware that something was missing. The soft prison of the palace was clashing with his internal drive for truth.
He's escaping the inevitable, but he hasn't seen it yet. Which leads us to the famous 4 excursions.
This is it. This is where the bubble bursts.
This is where the Truman Show set wall gets punctured.
Yes. The prince asks to go outside. The king allows it, but of course he tries to sanitize the route. He orders the streets cleaned, the sick and old hidden away, fresh flowers scattered everywhere.
He wants the city to look just like the palace.
He does. But as the text implies, the gods, or perhaps just the nature of reality itself, the Sudhavais devas or pure beings, they intervene to ensure the prince sees what he needs to see.
The first encounter is old age.
Right. The prince sees a man, and the text describes him so vividly. Decrepit, his back bent like a bow, leaning on a staff, his muscles gone, his skin wrinkled.
And the prince is just shocked.
Completely. He has literally never seen a human being in this state. He asks his charioteer, what is this? Is this some unique monster? Or is this a human?
And the charioteer, who plays the role of the truth teller here, the voice of reality, he just drops a bomb.
He does. He says, the youthful form must wear the garb of age. This is the common lot.
That phrase, the common lot, that's devastating.
It is. The prince asks, will this happen to me? And the charioteer says essentially, yes. To you, to your father, to your wife, to everyone.
So he realizes this isn't a tragic accident happening to one unlucky person.
No. It is the destination of everyone he knows. It changes the context of his life in an instant.
It does. I mean, imagine you are at a party, having a great time, and someone whispers in your ear, everyone in this room will be in a nursing home in 40 years.
It just sucks the air right out of the room. And that's what happens. The prince orders the chariot back to the palace. He can't enjoy the outing anymore.
Then comes the second excursion, disease.
He sees a sick man. The text says his body is wasted and trembling. He's gasping for breath. This introduces the fragility of the biological machine.
The realization that health is basically a temporary accident.
Right. It's not the default state. It's this precarious balance that can be upset at any moment by a virus, a bacteria, a genetic error.
And then the third one, the big one, death.
He sees a corpse being carried to the burning ground. The weeping relatives are following behind, and the prince demands to know what this is. The charioteer explains that this is the end of all life. The soul separates from the body, and the body becomes waste.
The prince's reaction is fascinating here. He doesn't just cry.
No, he gets angry. He gets angry at the absurdity of it. He says, how can a man, knowing he must die, sit down to enjoy his pleasure?
That's the logical break right there. It's not just, oh, that's sad. It's, if that is the ending, then everything I'm doing in the palace is a lie.
Exactly. It completely destroys the value of the pleasure. If the ice cream is going to melt in 5 seconds, there's no point in trying to savor it. In fact, the act of savoring it becomes a form of torture because you're just watching it vanish.
And finally, the fourth excursion is the ascetic.
A calm, self-controlled figure who offers an alternative, someone who has stepped out of the game.
And this gives the prince hope.
It does. He sees that there is a way to handle this reality without despair. There is a path of dignity and control.
So the prince goes back to the palace, but he's a different person. And this leads to what I call the party crasher moment. The king, sensing the prince is drifting away, he doubles down.
Oh, he really does. He organizes a massive party. He sends the most beautiful women in the kingdom to the garden to seduce him.
And the text is very specific here.
It is. The women are described as skilled in the arts of seduction. They are trying to move his heart with glances, touches, and playful banter. It represents the absolute peak of sensory delight.
But the prince is immune now.
He is. He looks at them and he sees future corpses. He sees the skeleton beneath the skin. The illusion of beauty, which, it relies on a snapshot in time, is shattered by his awareness of time moving forward.
He asks, how can I desire this, knowing it will rot?
Exactly. And then comes the scene that really seals the deal, the sleeping women scene.
Right.
The prince wakes up in the middle of the night. The musicians and dancers have all fallen asleep. And without their conscious effort to pose and look pretty, the reality of the body just takes over.
It's a grotesque scene in the text, almost like a horror movie.
It is. They're described as drooling, their limbs distorted, clothes in disarray, some grinding their teeth, some talking in their sleep. The text says they look like dead bodies thrown about in a charnel house.
It's the morning after the frat party, but with profound philosophical consequences.
It destroys the root of lust. Lust depends on a polished presentation. It depends on a facade. When the prince sees the biological reality, the spit, the awkward angles, the unconscious twitching, he realizes that his pleasure prison is actually a graveyard. The bodies are just temporarily animated.
Now, there's a character here I want to bring in, Uday. He's the prince's friend, but he's basically the devil's advocate.
Yes.
He tries to argue the prince back into enjoying the party. This is before the sleeping scene.
Uday is the voice of worldly wisdom. He represents the Carpe Diem philosophy. He argues that even the great seers of old men like Visvamitra and Agastya, they all succumb to lust.
So his argument is basically, use crafty expedients to enjoy life.
Take it till you make it. Even if you know it ends, why not enjoy the ride? Why be so serious? It's the argument most people make today.
Don't think too hard about it, just have a beer.
Exactly. And the prince's counter-argument is just pure logic. He says it is not manly or wise to yield to a burning fire. His point is, if these pleasures were permanent, they might be worth the investment.
But because they perish.
They are a trap. You are investing your energy into something that has a guaranteed return of zero. That is simply bad strategy.
Bad strategy. I love that. He's not saying it's a sin. He's saying it's a bad investment.
Precisely. It is an economic argument of the soul. Why buy stock in a company you know is going bankrupt tomorrow?
So the illusion is shattered. He can't stay. Which brings us to segment 2. The great renunciation. He has to leave.
The departure is described as a breaking of fetters. And the biggest fetter isn't the palace walls, it's relationships. The text emphasizes that he has to sever the ties of affection to his father, his wife, and his newborn child.
Which sounds incredibly harsh to modern ears. We consider family the ultimate good.
It does. But in the context of the text, these relationships are seen as soft chains. They bind you to the cycle of suffering because affection breeds fear of loss. If you love something, you are terrified of losing it.
So to be fearless.
The prince believes he must be unattached.
So he leaves in the dead of night. He rides his horse, Kandaka, out of the city. But the king doesn't give up.
Oh, no.
He sends a minister to chase him down and bring him back. And this debate between the prince and the minister is incredible. It's a full-on philosophical duel in the middle of the forest.
It is a clash of two worldviews. The minister argues for duty or dharma. He says the prince has a duty to his family and his kingdom. He implies that leaving is selfish.
And he cites examples, right, of other kings.
He does. Kings like Rama, who retired to the woods but returned to rule because their duty demanded it.
And he throws in a bit of skepticism too, right? This part really surprised me.
It is very surprising. The minister acts almost like a modern nihilist or a materialist here. He argues that salvation might not even exist. He says, why give up the certain pleasures of a kingdom for an uncertain hereafter?
It's a reverse Pascal's wager.
Exactly. Why bet on the unknown when you have the jackpot right here? Why trade a bird in the hand for a flock in the bush that might not even be there?
So how does the prince respond to that? I mean, it's a strong argument.
He deconstructs the idea of duty. He argues that relationships are unstable. He says, united in society, and then all is dispersed.
So you can't base your life's meaning on things that fall apart.
Right. If you base your duty on your father, what happens when your father dies? The duty dissolves. He is looking for a law that doesn't dissolve.
And then he uses the burning house metaphor?
Which is the ultimate refutation. If you're in a house and it catches fire, you leave. You don't go back in because you have a duty to the furniture. You don't stay because you aren't sure where you're going to sleep that night.
The immediate danger, the fire, overrides everything.
And the world is burning with old age and death. Returning to the palace would be like walking back into the fire.
The minister tries one more angle, the nature argument.
Yes, he says things are just as they are. Fire is hot, water is wet, people are born and die. It's just nature. Accept it. Stop fighting the current.
And the prince's rebuttal is sharp.
It is. He says if nature, Svabhava, is the cause of birth, then nature is also the cause of death. If you follow nature, you are following the path to the grave. The prince is looking for something outside of nature.
He wants to stop the wheel, not just ride it.
He argues that we must find a way out of the cycle of nature. He refuses to accept that this is just how it is the final answer.
So he wins the debate, at least in his own mind. The minister has to go back empty-handed. The prince keeps going. He enters the forest deeper. This leads us to segment 3. He meets the professionals, the hermits, and the philosophers.
First, he encounters the ascetics in the forest. These are men practicing severe self-mortification. We're talking about eating only herbs, fasting for weeks.
Holding painful postures, standing on one leg, exposing themselves to extreme heat and cold.
All of it. Their goal is to build up merit.
It's a transactional view of spirituality.
Exactly. They believe that by suffering now, they're paying for a ticket to heaven.
And the prince looks at this and just shakes his head. He's not impressed.
Not at all. He critiques it as a bad economic model.
Yeah.
He calls it trading suffering for suffering.
How so?
Well, you suffer now in the forest to gain happiness later in heaven. But since heaven is temporary in this cosmology, once your merit runs out, you fall back down to earth, you eventually suffer again.
So it's a zero-sum game.
You aren't solving the problem, you're just delaying the crash. It's like saving up for a vacation. The vacation is great, but eventually you have to come home and go back to work.
And he wants to retire. He doesn't want a vacation.
Precisely. So he leaves the extreme ascetics and goes to the intellectuals. He meets Arata and Udraka. These are the Samkhya philosophers.
This is a crucial intellectual turning point.
It is. These teachers explain a very sophisticated system. They believe in a dualism. There is nature, prakriti, which is matter and mind, and there is the soul, Atman, which is the true knower.
And they teach that liberation comes when the soul realizes it is separate from nature.
Right. I am not this body. I have not these thoughts.
Which sounds a lot like what the prince is looking for, separation.
It's close. It's very, very close. But the prince spots a flaw. And this is the moment where Buddhism really breaks away from the Hindu systems of the time.
What's the flaw?
The prince argues that if there is a knower, a soul that is liberated, there is still a duality. There is still an I that is free.
And why is that a problem?
Because as long as there is an I, there is a seed of identity. And where there is identity, there is the potential to return to bondage. If there's a self that stands apart from the world, that self is still a thing. It still has boundaries.
So the prince argues, if you say the I is permanent, then there is no deliverance.
That's the line. He's saying that as long as you exist, you have a problem.
Basically.
True liberation must be the total extinction of the I, not just the purification of it. It's not about polishing the mirror. It's about smashing the mirror.
That is a terrifying thought for most people. We want to be free, but we want to be there to enjoy the freedom. We want to say, look at me, I'm free.
Exactly. The prince is saying that's impossible. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be you and be free. You have to disappear.
So he leaves the teachers. He's on his own now. He tries the starvation diet for 6 years, realizes that's also useless. It just makes him weak and delirious.
Right. The text describes him touching his stomach and feeling his spine. He realizes that a starved brain can't think clearly.
So he eats some rice milk, regains his strength, and finally sits down under the Bodhi tree. Segment 4, Enlightenment.
This is the climax. But before he can break through, he has to fight the final boss, Mara.
Mara is usually described as a demon, the Lord of Desire. But in the text, this battle feels very psychological. It's internal.
It is deeply psychological. Mara doesn't just attack with monsters and arrows, though the poem describes those vivid images. He attacks with arguments.
What kind of arguments?
He tempts the prince with the glory of the warrior caste, Kshatriya Dharma. He appeals to his ego. He says, you could be a great king. You could fix the world through politics. You could be loved by millions.
That's a powerful temptation, the idea of doing good through power.
Yes. Mara represents the internal clinging to life and power. Mara is the voice in your head that says, don't you want to be famous? Don't you want to be powerful? Don't you want to leave a legacy?
And the prince has to silence that voice.
He has to realize that even being a good king is still part of the burning house.
And once he defeats Mara, essentially, by ignoring him and remaining immovable, the sky clears and he gets down to the real work, the intellectual breakthrough.
The 12 nidanas, the chain of causation. This is the core of the philosophy.
So under the tree, the Buddha acts like a forensic scientist. He traces the root of suffering by working backward. He asks, why is there death?
Because there is birth. If you aren't born, you can't die.
Simple enough.
Yeah.
So why is there birth?
Because of deeds or karma, or more accurately, becoming, the will to become.
And why is there becoming?
Because of clinging, upadana. Why clinging? Because of desire, Krishna. Why desire? Because of sensation. Why sensation? Because of contact.
And he keeps going back, right? Contact comes from the senses from name and form all the way back to the root.
And the root is ignorance, avidya.
No, we need to clarify ignorance here, because it doesn't mean he just didn't read enough books.
Correct. In this context, ignorance means a fundamental misunderstanding of reality, specifically the delusion that there is a self. It is the error of thinking you are a solid, separate entity. It is the error of seeing the world as a collection of permanent objects rather than a flowing process.
So the solution is simple, in theory.
In theory, kill the root.
Exactly. If you destroy ignorance, the whole chain collapses. The text uses the metaphor, the fire goes out for want of grass.
If you stop feeding the fire of ignorance, the chain reaction stops, birth stops, death stops.
And that state where the fire goes out, that's nirvana.
Yes. And the text is very careful to define nirvana negatively. It is not a place like heaven. It is the exhaustion of fuel.
It's described as quietness, cooling, and the end of becoming.
Right, the blowing out of the candle. When a flame goes out, where does it go? It doesn't go north or south. It just ceases to be a flame. That is nirvana.
So he's done it. He's cracked the code. He touches the earth to witness his awakening. Now he has to explain it to people. Segment 5, the ministry. He goes to find his old friends, the 5 ascetics who abandoned him when he started eating again.
This is the first sermon, the turning of the wheel of the law. He starts by laying out the middle way. He rejects the emaciated devotee because pain is just confusion. It clouds the mind.
And he rejects the sensualist because pleasure is blindness.
Yeah.
It distracts the mind.
Exactly. And he uses a great analogy here about wood and fire.
Oh, right.
He says you can't strike fire from rotten wood. That's the ascetic, too weak. And you can't strike fire from wet wood. That's the sensualist, too damp with pleasure.
You need dry hardwood.
That is the disciplined, balanced mind. You need a body that is healthy enough to support the mind, but not so pampered that it distracts the mind.
So he starts converting people left and right. But the debates get really interesting when he runs into people with strong opposing views, like the fire worshippers.
The Kasyapa brothers.
Wow.
They were leaders of a massive sect that worshipped fire. They believed that tending the sacred flame was the path to the divine.
And the Buddha just walks in and says, what?
He argues that their external fire worship is useless. He internalizes the metaphor. He says the real fire is lust, anger, and ignorance.
Yeah.
That is what is burning you.
So nirvana is the extinguishing of that fire, not the tending of a physical flame.
He basically tells them, you are worshiping the symbol of your own destruction. It's a powerful moment.
And then there's the debate with the skeptic or the nobleman regarding the existence of a creator god or Isvara.
Right.
This is one of the most rigorous logical sections in the text, and it might surprise people who think of Buddhism as just being nice.
It is rigorous.
Yeah.
The Buddha deconstructs the idea of a creator deity with brutal efficiency. He asks, if a god made the world, why is there sorrow?
The classic problem of evil.
But he goes further, he says. If he is the maker, he must be the maker of evil deeds too. You can't give him credit for the sunset and not the cancer. If he is the cause of everything, he is the cause of suffering.
And he attacks the logic of creation itself.
Right. He asks, if God is self-existent and perfect, why does he need to create? Creation implies a lack, a desire, a need to make something.
If I bake a cake, it's because I want a cake. I have a lack of cake.
Exactly. If God has needs, he isn't perfect. If he has no needs, why did he bother creating the universe? The Buddha argues that the concept of a creator is logically inconsistent with the reality of the world we see.
And in the same section, he explains how you can have rebirth without a soul. This is the seed and shoot argument.
This is vital. This is the question everyone asks.
Right.
If there is no self, what gets reincarnated? Who moves from life to life?
Exactly. If I don't have a soul, how can I be reborn?
The text explains. The shoot springs from the seed. The seed is not the shoot, not one, and yet not different.
Can we unpack that? That's a bit of a riddle.
Think of a billiard ball hitting another billiard ball. The energy is transferred. The second ball moves because of the first. But the second ball is not the first ball.
Okay.
There is continuity of consequence, but no continuity of substance. You are the shoot caused by the seed of your past moments. The you of 5 minutes ago is the seed. The you of now is the shoot. You are the same entity, but you are connected.
That helps. It's a stream of cause and effect, not a traveling ghost.
Precisely. It's a transfer of momentum, not a transfer of a person.
Okay, segment 6. The end of the road, parinirvana. The Buddha is old. He's 80. He announces he's going to die.
The great demise. The text says the earth quakes, and his disciple Ananda starts weeping. This is a very human moment, and Ananda has been with him for decades.
But the Buddha doesn't comfort him with platitudes, does he? He doesn't say, there, I'll be watching over you from the clouds.
Not at all. He comforts him with logic. He rebukes the grief. He says, if things around us could be kept for aye, this would be salvation.
He points out that Ananda is grieving because he wants the impossible.
Yes, he wants impermanent things to be permanent. He says, Ananda, have I not taught you that separation from all that is dear is inevitable?
It's like crying because the sun went down. It's the nature of the sun to go down. To cry about it is to argue with reality.
Exactly. And he tells them his last words, be your own lamps, or make yourself an island, he means. Don't depend on me. I'm just a finger pointing at the moon. Don't worship the finger. Look at the moon.
You have to walk the path yourself.
Right. And then he dies. Or rather, he enters the jhanas, these states of meditation, and simply ceases, like a lamp extinguished.
And then the irony of ironies in the aftermath.
Oh, this is rich.
It's incredible.
The man who spent 50 years preaching against attachment and material things dies. And immediately, the kings of the region start fighting over his bones.
The War of the Relics.
They mobilize armies to claim his ashes. It's absurd. A Brahmin has to step in to mediate. And he reminds them, the Lord ever employed the force of patience to adore with worship and yet to gender-wide destruction. How is this possible?
It perfectly illustrates how hard the teaching is. They missed the point before his body was even cold.
They turned the teacher of non-attachment into the ultimate object of attachment.
Yeah.
They wanted to possess the container because they couldn't grasp the content.
Indeed. Well, that brings us to the end of the text, but not the end of the deep dive. It is time for segment 7, thought experiments.
Let's test these ideas.
Disclaimer, these are for entertainment and educational purposes only. Do not try this at home, especially the teleportation bit.
Agreed.
Okay, experiment 1, the teleporter problem. This is a classic sci-fi trope, but let's look at it through the lens of the seed and shoot paradox we just discussed.
Go on.
You step into a teleporter on Earth. It scans every atom of your body, destroys you, vaporizes you, and beams the information to Mars, where a machine reassembles an identical copy of you using local atoms.
Right. The classic question is the person on Mars you?
A Western philosopher, relying on the idea of a soul or a continuous self might say, no, the original you died. The Mars person is a clone. The continuity of the substance is broken.
But how would the text analyze this?
Based on the seed and shoot argument, I think the Buddha would say, the person on Mars is not the same, the seed is gone, but not different, the shoot comes from the seed.
I think you're right. The text challenges the idea that we need a continuous substance to have continuity. I mean, if I go to sleep and wake up, am I the same person?
Not really.
I'm the shoot of the seed that went to bed. The teleporter is just a more dramatic version of what happens every second. We are a stream of information, not a solid block of identity.
So the Buddha might comfortably step into the teleporter knowing that he doesn't exist anyway.
You think you would? He'd have no problem with it.
That is strangely comforting and terrifying at the same time. It suggests that death happens every moment, so the big death isn't that special.
Exactly.
Okay, experiment 2, the perfect simulation.
The Mara test.
Exactly. Imagine a machine, let's call it the bliss box. You plug in, it stimulates your brain to feel constant, low-level satisfaction. You don't need to eat, sleep, or achieve anything. You just feel good forever.
Or until the machine breaks. No pain, no decay.
No pain, no visible decay. Mara would sell this as heaven, right? I can give you the pleasure without the rot.
He would, but the Buddha would reject it.
Why? I mean, it solves the suffering problem, doesn't it? If suffering is the enemy, isn't the bliss box the hero?
No, because it relies on contact. Remember the chain of causation. Sensation comes from contact. The bliss box is a form of contact. It makes your happiness dependent on the machine.
And anything dependent is bondage.
Exactly. If the power goes out, your bliss vanishes. True liberty, according to the text, is independence from any condition, external or internal.
So the bliss box is just a golden cage. It's the palace all over again, just with better technology.
That's it. The Buddha wants a happiness that is self-sourced, or rather, a peace that comes from the cessation of needing inputs. He'd unplug the machine.
He would. And he'd probably tell the person inside that their bliss is just froth and bubbles.
He would argue that the reliance on the stimulation is itself a form of suffering, a form of hunger.
Harsh but consistent.
Always consistent.
Well, we have walked from the gilded cage of the palace to the cooling fires of Nirvana. We've seen arguments against the permanence of the soul, the utility of extreme pain, and the existence of a creator God.
It is a text that challenges the very foundation of how we view our lives. We spend our days building palaces, careers, reputations, families, trying to create stability. This text looks us in the eye and says, "It's burning. Get out."
And that leads me to our final provocative thought for the listener. The text leaves us with this haunting image. The Buddha is gone, like a fire extinguished.
Yes.
We live in a culture obsessed with legacy. We want to leave a mark, make a dent in the universe, be remembered.
Absolutely.
But if the goal of the greatest wisdom is to simply cease to be, to wipe out the footprints so completely that no one can follow, is our obsession with legacy the ultimate form of ignorance?
That is the question. Is leaving a mark just another way of clinging to the burning house? Are we painting portraits on the walls of a building that is out to collapse?
Something to mull over. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into talk treatises.
Until next time.